Welcome to another edition of Ask the Hub. Today we'll talk about how to have an effective design sprint, and for that we invited Rob Hough. He's the head of design of Nuam, a UK-based software company. Hi Rob, how are you doing?
Hi David, thanks for having me.
Great that you found the time. So, first of all, what is the design sprint and how is it structured?
So a design sprint, when I talk about design sprints, it's a process that's a kind of a 5-day step-by-step process to help kind of test new ideas and solve big problems. It comes from a book, basically, from a guy called Jake Knapp. He wrote a book about 6-7 years ago, something like that. He started running these at Google. There are a bunch of design techniques put together and that he started doing there, and he moved over to Google Ventures and started running these with startups, wrote a book about it and kind of spiraled there. I first learned about it, I was working at a corporate, went to Google and they did like a training day as part of the thing because we to teach people. And then instantly I was a convert straight away. I bought the book. I realized this was kind of a missing puzzle for projects I've worked on. It's always been so hard to start these things off, to really make sure I've always, like anyone, I went in going, okay, should I do wireframes first? Should I do research? Who do we need there? Have we got the stuff? The design sprint was a step-by-step process to do all this. So that's basically where it comes from. It's a 5-day process to solve big problems and test new ideas.
Yeah, I think design sprints are really fascinating. I also read the book actually a couple of years ago, and it's not so much every idea by itself, but really the combination, right? The process of these different tools that makes it so interesting and so effective, right? And efficient at the same time as well, right? Because you do it really fast, actually. So. Okay, you use it a lot at Nuam, right? It's an important part of your DNA. Tell me a little bit more about this. How do you do it actually at Nuam?
So as at Nuam, we're a product design studio basically. So we help build digital products, apps, software, things like that. And we work almost exclusively with early stage startups. So people who've probably not got a product at all. They're just they've got an idea, they've been talking to people, they've got funding, or maybe they've got an MVP and they want to improve it. So we essentially run design sprint as the starting point for any project work we do now. It's been massively transformative for us because it allows us to go into any project and be able to run a step-by-step process and help these guys figure out what their biggest challenges are and test those challenges so they know what the next steps to do. For the way we do it differently, we pretty much do it straight from the book. The biggest difference really is we do it in 4 days rather than 5. We just found that squishing the first 2 days into one was a lot easier to get the right people in the room. CEO of a busy startup, they've got a million other jobs going on, having them only for 2 days instead of 3 days really helped. And also we use that Friday to do a bit of a debrief and a retro to discuss all the data we found and figure out what the next steps are. Maybe they need to go into development, start building this thing. Maybe they need to do some more research and figure out. There's loads of different paths they can go on. So we've adapted it slightly in our own way, but pretty much we do very similar from the book. It's been really good for us.
And then you hear often the term actually design sprint together with startups and MVPs. Is it just for startups? Is it just a technique that startups can use?
Not really, I don't think so. We obviously, that's mostly our core customers, so that's what we do. And I think, when it was sort of built, the main people using it were startups. But now if you look in the design sprint community, there's people running it in enterprises, charity organizations, big corporates. So in my experience, the difference is the kind of benefits. So for startups, they're getting a prototype, they're putting it in customers' hands. It's probably the first time they've done that, or maybe one of the few times. Seeing someone actually use something instead of just explaining your idea it's a big revelation for teams and founders to figure that out. Whereas with the larger companies, what they really get out of it, I think, is the alignment. So those 2 workshop days, most companies don't work like that. They work in silos. There's a lot of internal politics. They're sending emails and documents and all this sort of stuff to each other. But getting them in a room and actually, instead of just talking, they're getting out pens, they're writing things down. It's such a different way of working. Sometimes it puts people on the back foot a little bit, especially the more senior people. When you ask them to get out some pens and do some sketching, they freak out a little bit. But every time I've done it, that's always been with larger companies. They're like, we need to work like this. We need to start doing more of this. We need to stop spending 2 months doing meeting after meeting. We need to do a 2-day workshop and get twice as much done. So you can do it for both. I just think the benefits are slightly different, I think.
Yeah, interesting. And what would you say are common mistakes that people do when it comes to design sprints? What do you see often as mistakes?
I think the most common mistakes, I think, are not choosing the right problem. So what I mean by that is people hear design, like you were saying earlier, and they think, okay, it's design stuff. Okay, we can do some new look and feel stuff. We can, do some better UI and stuff. And those things are all great and important, but it's not really something a design sprint's great for. Design sprints are there to test these ideas and, try different things and see if they work. You do some look and feel updates, you're basically just getting people's opinion on them, really. Whereas you want to go in with a design sprint with a hypothesis to either confirm or deny, like, well, if we did this idea, users will hate it. Well, let's go find that out, right? Let's go actually answer that question instead of just guessing. So you need to kind of go in the right problem. So going in with something too narrow or too flimsy like that doesn't really use the best use of time. But equally going in with something like, oh, we don't know what we're doing at all. We're just getting a room, we'll figure it out, brainstorm kind of style. You see these, in some of the large corporates still do these. Again, they're quite useless in my opinion. They don't really yield anything. It's kind of a false way of doing creativity. What's great for a design sprint is you want to have some assumptions maybe or some hypotheses, and you want to be willing to have those challenged and kind of test out whether those things are true or not. So I think that is probably the biggest mistake I see when people run design sprints.
Imagine now somebody comes to you and says, hey, Rob, I would like to do a design sprint. What are your 3 most important tips? Like, what is like really the most important so that I can make an effective, a good design sprint? What should you tell to that person?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the first one is getting the right people and the right amount of people in the room. So the first 2 days of the design sprint, how we do it, are basically a 2-day workshop. So you need kind of people there. And usually in companies when ideas are formed, you have the most senior people maybe, and they'll work something out and they'll filter it down to someone else and they'll filter it down to someone else. Great thing about design sprint is you get the right people in the room all together. By right people, what I mean is the people with the right expertise. So in my experience, that's not always, you obviously want senior people there because you don't want someone kind of coming in and throwing all that work out at the end of the week. But great people to have in from a product point of view is customer support people, sales people. These people talk to people all the time. Customer support people talk to more users than any sort of product team ever will. So they know like what the biggest frustrations are. Or salespeople know what people are going to buy and what they're not. Even if it's just for the first part, when you're doing the expert interviews, these people's knowledge is invaluable. So that's what I mean by the right people. And engineers you want there, obviously the people who've got ownership over stakeholders and stuff. And also, you don't want too many people. I think 7 or 8 is kind of the magic number for us. That's kind of where you get kind of enough expertise and enough broad range, but not too many people that it kind of goes off the rails. So that'd be my first thing for running a design sprint. Also, like I was talking about earlier, the openness, coming in with the right problem and the right attitude is a great thing. And also if you're an agency or a freelancer or whatever, consultant running these, it's up to you to kind of explain that to people coming in, to make sure that, look, we're not going to just recreate like your idea. We're not going to design out everything. What we're going to do is validate these ideas so at the end of it which ones are worth going on and what you need to do. So setting the tone and making sure people understand the process before they go in, because a lot of this stuff is alien to people. They've not especially when you work with the larger corporates, especially. They don't sit in workshops a lot. They go from meeting to meeting, talking all the time. You ask them to get out of pens and do some sketching, and a lot of them freak out and, going, I can't do that, So it's kind of alien. So you have to kind of be empathetic to that. But what's so great about it is once they've done it, I don't think I've ever had a design sprint where I've done it and people have gone, no, the way we were doing it is better. But you've got to kind of take them on the journey with you before you start it. So I think in terms of the top 2, I think that's it. Getting the right people in the room and setting the right tone. And, like we were talking about earlier, having the right type of problem and stuff like that.
Thank you very much for your insight on the topic of design sprints.
No worries, it's been great.
For the viewers out there, if you have other questions on design sprints or newer, please leave them down here in the comments and we are happy to answer them. See you next time.